Donald Trump is up and tweeting this morning. He just posted this. Nobody should be allowed to burn the American flag. If they do, there must be consequences, perhaps loss of citizenship or a year in jail. Where this comes from, I'm not sure, but that's an obvious violation of the First Amendment. Hard to know exactly what to make of that.
So here's a history, though, of it. And actually, we have just grown up to assume that you could always burn the American flag or desecrate it. You know, in 1989, there was a case, Texas v. Johnson, where it actually was a 5-4 decision and just barely passed. I think Kennedy was the one that as usual, wrote the decision and was the deciding vote. So
I think many Americans would support that.
And then in 2006, I think it was 2005, 2006, the Senate actually tried to amend the Constitution to prevent desecration of the flag, and it only failed by 1 vote. I only bring this up to say maybe some people around him have said, hey, this wouldn't be a bad issue to push for, to stop people in the age of Colin Kaepernick and others, stop people from burning the American flag. And while elites will sniff and again, this is a much closer decision, at least, than a lot of people assume it is.
I think it's an interesting thing to bring up at this time because hate crimes are, you know, obviously, I mean, there was even yesterday after a terrible event, law enforcement saying we treat hate crimes like murder. And you could say, you could look at a connection between flag burning and that being to the next level of some sort of hate crime. I mean, you certainly don't, you see that with other symbols across the country in cases that I don't want to dig myself into a hole, but it's a bad thing to do.
Well, it is, but it's protected by the... I mean, I would never burn a flag. I find
ever.
Oh, come on, Willie. You do it every day in the office.
And the reason why you wouldn't is because it is a hateful act.
It is, but I don't
right.
find it to be a criminal act.
No.
And it's protected, whether you like it or not. It's protected. So I would never do it. I don't like when people do it.
No, is there a news tag with this? Why?
Not that we're aware of.
Where did this come from?
No, it was random.
Just a random morning tweet.
I'm just trying to.
Again, though,
it's just a shiny object.
Again, Philip, I think it would surprise a lot of people, like, well, us around the table, like Willie, like all of us have grown up and just said, hey, we can burn the flag. It's hateful, it's disgusting, but it's protected by the First Amendment. Right. Somebody, I don't know, maybe somebody got Trump's ear going, you know, there's only a 5-4 decision. Can you imagine putting Democrats? No, think about this. Right. Imagine putting Democrats in the position and editorial writers in the position to say, you know, to come down on the side of flag burning. And yes, they'd proudly do it. It's just all those people that voted for Donald Trump would go, wait a second, why can't you appoint the 5th justice to make it 5-4 the other way?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking for another fight post-election to pit the so-called elites against so-called middle America, this is a hell of a fight to pick, right? I mean, this is something that absolutely Donald Trump has, over the course of his campaign, taken stands that are in opposition to the First Amendment, suggesting he'd open up libel laws against the media, you know, suggesting that perhaps in other ways the free speech should be curtailed. But, you know, what we've seen and what we saw with Donald Trump's election was that the power of the elites was somewhat limited, that the media is not held in high regard, that newspaper editorials went overwhelmingly for Hillary Clinton, no one cared. And I think that this, if he wants to keep fighting against the elites, this is one way to do it.
I guess it is. I don't know about the timing right now.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't understand the timing.
We're supposed to be talking about his transition.
I'm just trying to look at things differently. Every time something happens, I try not to go for the low-hanging fruit because that has not worked.
What I wonder
that has not worked in covering this story.
Now, what I wonder, Mika, is this. The media doesn't know how to handle the tweets.
Yeah.
And they've actually written
they get very upset.
hand-wringing stories about not knowing how to handle the tweets.
Yeah.
If you're a Democrat, just let me talk to my Democratic friends, because when I was in Congress, I actually sat on the Democratic side, which wouldn't surprise a lot of my Republican people that hiss at me on the Republican side. Don't take the bait here, okay? Just don't take the bait, because you just let it go, you know? I just let it.
You're making them see. I mean, they're annoyed.
No,
they're annoyed.
No, I'm not making Democrats see. I'm just saying this is just not a fight you want to engage in. When he appoints his next justice, fight it there. But doesn't this seem, at least this is a sort of bait that Trump throws out there? And when I say elites, I'm talking about us, including most of us around the table would probably say, yeah, it's really sick to burn the American flag, but we're not going to throw somebody in jail for a year or take away their citizenship. And yet, I think a lot of people across America agree with the 4 justices. Because here's another thing. People are going to jump in there and go, this is unconstitutional. It was a 5-4 decision in '89. It just failed by 1 vote in 2006.
We're in the age of hate.
Yeah, so anyway.
Well, deep down, I think that a lot of the journalists who were really rooting for Hillary Clinton at the end of the day were somewhat sad about the prospect of Donald Trump being out of their day-to-day coverage because of tweets just like this that give them so much excitement to cover. And it's the immediate frenzy. He's constantly just providing a dopamine rush for journalists to go out and to analyze and talk about the First Amendment implications and, you know, what would this mean to free speech in America just because of a tweet he does at 7 a.m.
But the difference is between the host of Celebrity Apprentice throwing stuff like out and now the president-elect doing it is that he may appoint a Supreme Court justice. He may have some influence over whether or not this actually happens. So it's more serious than it was even a few months ago.
It's very serious.
And if you look at the last night, he was up, I won't get into it, but he was tweeting about another cable network just obsessively.
Right.
And he's the president-elect of the United States. He was retweeting like a 16-year-old who was trashing the network. It's just small.
What cable network?
Small. There was another one on the dial. I think it was
On the dial, on the dial.
No, he was going after CNN again, and he was up again this morning tweeting about CNN. Just about the general coverage.
They had a reporter who very correctly pointed out there is no example, there's no evidence that there was wide-scale voter fraud. And I think, to Willie's point, like, that's a much more serious issue. When Donald Trump is out there and trying to suggest that there is wide-scale voter fraud, retweeting some 16-year-old kid who essentially is like, you have to prove that it doesn't exist, which of course is not how it works. Like, that is, you know, I think it's sort of part and parcel with this flag tweet, because it is, in both cases, it is sort of undercutting what we expect American democracy to be about and what we expect our elected leaders to represent, especially like trying to undermine the election you won is just so baffling.
Yeah, it is. And as far as tweeting about networks, I mean, again, First Amendment, he's free to do it. Right. But why do you do it when you're having the most important meetings of...
Right.
Oh, wait a second. I just figured it out. All right. I think I know who he might pick as Secretary of State. Throw the red meat out there. Have everybody eat the red meat. And then you maybe you go with somebody like Romney, or maybe you go with Corker that offends the fire breathers, but you've given them this. Okay, yeah, I've done this before. I'm sorry. I'll be not these tweets, but I got to say, though, it's fascinating. It's fascinating that this case, I never realized this was a 5-4 case. So we now know what the first question every Trump Supreme Court pick is going to get when they go before the Judiciary Committee in the Senate. It's going to be about flag burning and First Amendment protections.
I think it's going to be a different conversation since 1989, too.
Yeah.
I do. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the leap here, as Alex correctly points out, is you don't revoke somebody's citizenship.
Right.
I don't know what the penalties were before 1989 for burning an American flag, but it certainly wasn't revoking their citizenship.
Right. No, I mean that's essentially as drastic a step as you can take if you're the American government, right? Is to say you're no longer an American. I mean,
and by the way, the Supreme Court, for everybody that says, oh, Trump's going to be a tyrant and he's going, that's why we have the Supreme Court. Trump could never do that, because the Supreme Court would say that's unconstitutional. Just like Congress passed a law in 1990 banning flag burning after the decision. And Congress and the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. That's unconstitutional.
Yeah, but I mean, the point you make, though, is that we're still sort of subject to the whims of 9 people, right? And, you know, it's hard to predict where those 9 people are going to wind up. I mean, obviously, we can usually predict where they're going to be, but on something like this, in this moment, it's hard to say.
We sure couldn't tell with the Affordable Care Act.
Right, sure.
But Robert sit on that still is one of the most stunning decisions
that was amazing.
in a long time.
Philip Baum, thank you so much. Good.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.